Hello and welcome to the Driving Maul show. Hi, I'm Paul and I'll be your host this evening. What are we going to be talking about? Well, Super Rugby basically, and more Super Rugby. We'll go through a bit of news, and before taking our normal quick look at Super Rugby Alpaki finals, and then running through our normal look at the stats across the Super Rugby games from the weekend, and then we'll have a little bit of a look forward to round 6 as well on that one. All on my own this weekend. This weekend. I was all with my own this weekend as well, but that's another matter entirely. On my own this week, so we go through this. So if there are bits of quiet, that's because I'm having a quick drink on my beer. And if you want to see all of the slides and things that I'm showing, then check that out on YouTube. Otherwise, you can listen to it as a podcast on the old on YouTube, also Facebook and Twitter. Actually, is a video thing, and then obviously you can listen to us as a podcast as well. Good evening to Simon, who has joined us in the live chat on YouTube at 8 p.m. every Monday. Folks, is when this show goes out. So, hope you all had a safe, good weekend. I was working on the census, making sure you are all counted, and this weekend. So, didn't get along to the club rugby that kicked off the season. Kicked off this weekend in the Thames Valley. So, unfortunately, didn't get along to Waihi in their opening game, or along to any of the games this weekend. I would have been along to the Moana Pacifica one and brought you some interviews in that, but unfortunately I couldn't get there. So sorry about that, folks. And we'll just have to crack on with what we saw on the old TV. But let's have a quick chat about some of the news stories that have been going around. So hot off the press, Scott Barrett has been allowed by New Zealand Rugby to play this coming weekend because of the injury crisis they have down there at the Crusaders. Now, I think this is a bit of a poor one by Razor to be doing this, to be honest. Let's be honest, if New Zealand, because at the end of the day, who is saying it? Is it New Zealand Rugby that's saying this, or is it Ian Foster that's saying that he can be released? I think it's Ian Foster, let's be honest, who will be giving the yes or no at the end of the day on this one. Basically, what Razor is setting this up was, if New Zealand Rugby said no, then it could easily have been spun into a Ian Foster snubbing Razor and stoking at that whole argument. Let's be honest, those two cannot be getting on very well at the moment. That relationship has got to be strained at the very best. So I think Razor, a bit of poor form by him to put Ian Foster in that kind of situation publicly. I think the way that I don't think Razor's handled himself great in this getting the All Blacks job. But hey, he keeps winning, so he can get away with anything at the moment. But you got to remember, on your way up, be careful who you upset, because on your way back down again, you might need them as some friends in that situation. So let's hope that doesn't happen to Razor. But as I say, I think he's burning some bridges on the way up, and now maybe it's all the old guard that are moving out anyway. But we'll have to wait and see. So Scott Barrett will be suiting up for the Crusaders, I believe, this coming weekend. Big piece of news that came out was that Sanzar Chiefs consider radical date shift for Rugby Championship All Blacks seasons. Basically, the South Africa and Argentina, who are obviously half of the Rugby Championship, have found that their players are in a real bad situation. Why? Well, basically, they're playing in the Northern Hemisphere season, which kicks off in sort of September, October time and goes through till June. They then play, obviously in that time, they play some November tests, and then play a mid-year tests in July before doing the August, September time for the Rugby Championship. And then, it's back to the Northern Hemisphere season. So essentially, the Springboks and Los Pumas currently have no off-season at all. which is a real bad situation to be in for those players. Let's be honest, when player welfare comes in, that should not be the situation. Now, the problem with this is obviously a problem that we've had for the last 25 years since we've gone professional, is we don't have a global season. And what is one of the answers to this? So one of the answers to this is to move the Rugby Championship basically into the Six Nations window. Boy, oh boy. Let's just take the Northern Hemisphere's issues of running concurrent competitions and bring them down and copy them in the Southern Hemisphere, or in Australia, New Zealand, essentially, when we say Southern Hemisphere. Let's be honest. Disaster. I mean, I can't think of a worse thing to do to the season, to be honest. The idea would be that you would have your test matches from March to April for that, then a May to September Super Rugby season, which would just be awful, because again, that would cover that would flip over and clash with the July internationals, which is the exact problem that you have with the Northern Hemisphere competitions running through the November window, and that sort of situation. So it's an absolute. To me, it's absolute disaster to go down that route. Simon says, I have no sympathy for the schedule. And Christopher Edwards says, this would be great for the game. I can't see how this would be great for the game at all. I can only see how it's bad for the game. So I don't know where you're coming from on this one. As Simon says, double damage for the NPC and club rugby it's just, how would those two fit in? I haven't got a clue at the moment. Nothing has been clarified on that one. So that is apparently one of the scenarios that they are looking at. They're looking at other ones as well. Who knows what those are, because let's be honest, Sanzar is hardly a transparent organisation, is it? Let's be honest. It just does stuff without actually bother consulting or letting anybody know on that one. Because of a global calendar is the way forward. It is. I agree. Totally agree. The global calendar is the way forward, but having the European calendar is, or everyone adopting the European calendar is not the way forward. For me, the best way to basically to run have a global calendar is to be very simple. You got to remember, rugby is, apart from perhaps France and Japan, rugby is a sport that is funded by international rugby, and that everything else that pays for everything else to a greater or lesser degree. Super Rugby is not self-sustaining, not self. There's no way that that's a viable competition on its own without its subsidies from international rugby. So, how do you go about it? You basically, for me, what you would do is January to June is club rugby, or in European parlance, or franchise rugby in sort of Australian, New Zealand parlance. So first January to June, basically Super Rugby, which is what essentially we have now, and then go July to December, international rugby. And if European competitions want to kick off before December, that's before January 1st, that's fine. They just don't have their internationals until the 1st of January. And make that clear to them. There might be some compromise and be able to bring that November window forward perhaps a couple of weeks, so that you end up being mid-November to end of December is kind of the off season for international players. But for me, that's the C. And basically, you then take your Six Nations and you put it in the Rugby Championship window is a much better way and makes much more sense to me as a flow. So you have your European, you have your domestic competitions through till the end of June. July, you have some, you have your tours. Then you have your big cup competition, either Rugby Championship and the Six Nations, and then November you have your tours going the other direction. That to me is a season that people can get their heads around, and that can be communicated to the public, and you can take them on that journey. Now, obviously in New Zealand we have the NPC happening that second half of the year. For Europe, what it might mean is their European competitions kick off and don't have their internationals for the first 2 months, or they have a different competition, and then roll into maybe a European competition or somehow. But anyway, that's that's to me, that is a much better structure than trying to move the rugby championship into a window and having different competition, different levels of rugby overlapping, or when we have the overlapping here in New Zealand, but we have club rugby and Super Rugby. There's a gap in between that, which is NPC. We never have adjacent levels running next to each other on this one. So to me, that would be a much better structure to the season. But look, it's not how European sports kind of think. And if you look at something like football, for example, in England, you have the league and the FA Cup and the League Cup all happening at sort of overlapping each other as well. And this idea of having blocks and getting whole competitions out the way isn't in the psyche of Europe, where they have these cup competitions overlapping with other things there. So look, it's in their psyche. It's not in the Southern Hemisphere psyche. Chris Evans Bailey goes, Six Nations will not move. The only way a global cover happens if Super Rugby moves. I might agree with you. Yes, I agree. Six Nations will not move. And that is damaging to rugby globally forever, unfortunately. The only other way of doing it is saying, right, the first 6 months of the year is going to be is going to be internationals, and then you have basically January. You have your tours to the Northern Hemisphere, then you have your Six Nations and Rugby Championship, and then finish off with May, or where you have the tours coming down to the Southern Hemisphere, maybe, and then have the second half of the year for domestic rugby. That one I wouldn't mind either, but basically take 6 months, give it to domestic, take 6 months and give it to international, and have a solid block. That's how you do it. So if you're going to go that route of putting the Six Nations not moving, then I suggest you move the July window to May, the November window to January, and the Rugby Championship into that Six Nations window. Put all the domestic rugby in the second half of the year. That could also work as well during that kind of thing. So that's to me how I think it should be structured. So we'll see what comes out of that one. Clearly, something has to change though, because it's just not fair. It's on the Argentinian and South African players at the moment. That is something that's going to have to change. There's been some talk around Super Rugby Aupaki, but I'll talk about the structure, what it looks like next year after we've talked about what's the word I'm looking for, after we've actually talked about those games for that what's the word I'm looking for that from last weekend. Also, Brad Shields has signed for the Hurricanes next year, so he's coming back to New Zealand. So that'll be an interesting one to see what kind of form he comes back in. Obviously, at the latter part of his career, now not in the height of his career when he left to go to England. On that one, so that's where that is at, and good luck to him when he comes back. It'd be interesting to have a chat with him about comparing Northern Hemisphere to Southern Hemisphere rugby if we can arrange that, but I don't know how easy that is going to be. Right, let's talk about some Super Rugby Aupaki, where we had 2 games at the weekend, the finals at the weekend on that one. And before we kick off, yes, I'm very disappointed in the Super Rugby crowd attendance. It was very Super Rugby Aupaki crowd attendance. Very disappointed in the good news that Super W competition will be shown on Sky Sports in New Zealand now. Yeah, we did have some Super W kicked off at the weekend. We did have those games on Sky. Yeah, look, there was nobody at F&G Stadium, but then again, there was nobody at Eden Park either. Super Rugby crowds across the board, for rugby crowds, unless the All Blacks are playing, no one turns up. There are a few minor examples, minor exceptions to that, where you get a final somewhere that's not happened recently, the Super Rugby final will get a decent crowd, let's be honest. But even your quarterfinals in Christchurch don't necessarily pull a good crowd. The All Blacks Super Rugby final, potentially the NPC final, depending on who is actually who's hosting it, that can also get a good crowd. But it is a depending one. So look, crowds are a disaster across the board for rugby, and New Zealand Rugby don't seem to want to do anything about it, or don't seem capable of doing anything about it. So in the third, fourth playoff, the Hurricanes jumped out to a 21-0 lead in the first 20 minutes, and the Blues were never able to claw back that deficit. So congratulations to the Hurricanes, who finished last in the round robin with just one win. They got 2 wins out of their 5 games this season. So well done to them with that one. And then in the final, wow, the Chiefs have never, I remember, ever lost a game of rugby or in their entire existence until last weekend, where they lost the game at 33-31. A missed conversion and a missed penalty on the buzzer meant that it could have gone the other way, or it could have gone to extra time. So a real close one here, cracking one, with the Chiefs initially going out to a 19-0 lead in the first quarter. Then before the matter to pull it back to 22-19, a try just before half time, and it was 22-26 at half time with the Chiefs leading. But Matatu came out, dominated most of the second half to take that 33-26 lead. And I say there was that late try and a late penalty that could have, if they'd been converted, or if that got, or either of those kicks had gone over, could have been a different result. But congratulations to Matatu on winning that game and becoming Super Rugby Apaki champions in year 2, and being the first side to ever defeat Chiefs Manawa in that one. So the blink and you miss it competition is now over. 5 weeks plus 1 week of pre-season, and it's done. Now, was this Super Rugby? And the answer is no, it wasn't. It was in name, but for the players, their experience was not Super Rugby, unfortunately. You have a small number of players who are in the All Blacks who have got full contracts, and then the rest of the players are semi-professional. What does that mean? That means Monday to Wednesday, they are in their full-time jobs, even during the season. They only have one training session a week. On the Thursday, their captain's run, and then basically they have their games, and that's it. This is not that. So from that point of view, this is not full-time rugby. When still not seeing Super Rugby for women in that sense of the word. I know a lot of people say, "Oh, look, they're getting paid the same as the boys are." Yeah, pro-rated, they're getting paid for 5 weeks at full salary, when the guys are getting paid for 12 months at their full salary. So it's a very different number there. If it goes full time for that 5 weeks, you're going to have a lot of players just basically cannot afford to give up their job for over a month to play this game. Now they're already giving up something they won't have had a day off in the last month and a half, basically, because they're either working or they're playing rugby. No rest at all, no proper recuperation, player welfare, yada yada yada, out the window, folks. Who cares about that? So something does need to change. Now, first of all, it needs to be a longer competition. But if it becomes a longer competition, then they need to get paid properly. But clearly, that is a real problem. Look, amateur teams, yeah, you're right, quite often used to train a Tuesday and a Thursday night. They still do. Amateur club rugby does. But they're talking about the catchment area for Waihi is Waihi. The catchment area for the Chiefs goes from one coast of the country to the other coast of the country, the catchment of the area for Auckland goes from Auckland all the way up to the tip of the North Island, which is a good 6-7 hour drive. You can't do that for a you can't drive down there. I mean, obviously, very few. I'm not sure if any of the players live at the very tip of the North Island, but the tip of Northland. But you can't commute like that for an evening's training session. It just doesn't. It's just not healthy for you. Also, if you're working shift work, you're buggered. Let's be honest. So, it's a problem for the teams for New Zealand Rugby to figure out. Stuff has come up with a number of suggestions as to what what it could look like next year. Now, long term, clearly, it is the merging of Super Rugby Aupaki and Super W. Now, again, I think that will be wrong. I'm afraid, folks. Sorry, but copying the men or copying men's rugby, which is what women's rugby seems to be doing at the moment, saying, "Oh well, look, let's just recreate men's professional rugby, which we know is broken." Yeah, that'll work, folks. Not. But that appears to be what we're doing. So that's the where we're heading down. There doesn't seem to be any kind of out of the box thinking about how to do something different. Anyway, so suggestions for next year is that is basically a 2 rounds competition. So basically, each team plays each other twice, which would then take that 3-week to a 6-week one, and then potentially play each of the 6 Super Rugby WW sides, which could and have a final. So that could make it a 13-week competition, for example, excluding pre-season. The other option is that you take the New Zealand 4 teams, the Australian 5 teams plus a drawer, and have 10 teams, and then you can play each other once in a final, which would be an 11-week competition. Or there is to have 2 rounds, just the 6-week competition plus finals, which take probably out to about 8, which would just increase what we've got already, but not have that cross Tasman thing. Look, I think there needs to be some sort of cross Tasman next year. Whether it doesn't, listening to or reading what's in stuff there, they don't think that that's likely to happen. But we will have to wait and see how this one all pans out from that point of view. Simon says, "Yep, it's totally pathetic structure of the competition. Needs to have a double round robin next year and link up to Australia." Absolutely, that's what needs to happen. There's definitely stuff that needs to be that can be learned from netball as well, which has been women's professional sport here in New Zealand. Look, they've had cross Tasman competitions that's fallen apart. They've gone back to both the purely domestic competitions. So I think we can learn for something from that. And he says women's rugby needs a Highlanders franchise. To me, I don't think so. I think you're better off doing like you suggested there, probably splitting the Chiefs and having a Chiefs franchise in Hamilton, and then Tauranga, which is the base of the Black Fern Sevens and the All Black Sevens as well team. I would put a team out of Tauranga, not out of the Highlanders. Why? Well, basically, Southland still doesn't have an a Farah Palmer Cup team. There's only one Farah Palmer Cup team down there, whereas you could put if you had a one in the Taranaki, you could potentially have Taranaki and Cannies Manukau. Bay of Plenty and Cannies Manukau have that team, where and then the Chiefs could be from Waikato and Taranaki. As an example, as to how that kind of thing could be split up potentially. I'm pretty sure there's 5 franchises in the Chiefs area, and I've gone blank as to what the other one is, because it's Waikato, Bay of Plenty, Cannies Manukau, Taranaki. Is there another one? No, there probably isn't actually on that one. Did I watch any of the Women's Six Nations at the weekend? No, I didn't. Sorry. I did not look. I did not watch that, and then there is also the WXV qualification. They probably that's trying to make the Six Nations as big in itself, so they don't need to talk about that. Is what's probably going on there. So we'll see. Will there be 2 rounds next year with no crossover? Will there be 2 rounds and crossover, or will there be a fully integrated competition across the board? We'll have to wait and see. What's the difference between Super W and Super Rugby Aupaki? Well, Super Rugby Aupaki is the New Zealand version that's been going for 2 years. Super W has been going is the women's Super Rugby competition in Australia, which isn't fully professional. It's been going for 5 or 6 years now, which is good from that. Which is obviously good because it's been going for longer over there, but not good in the fact it's not fully professional yet either. So both sides need investment. Can either of them be justified or in the boardroom? Where's that money going to come from? We'll have to wait and see on that one. Right then. I think it's time for us to get on to the Super Rugby, which means I need to bring up my stats on screen. And it probably also means that I need to take a quick drink, folks. So I'll put the stats up, have a quick drink, and then we'll get on to the Super Rugby from the weekend. And for a second there, I thought I typed in the word France rather than force. But there we go. I didn't. So that's good. So suitably refreshed and ready to kick on with the second half of the show. Before I do so, don't forget you can become a supporter of New Zealand Sport Radio via patreon.com/NZ Sport Radio. That would be much appreciated, folks. Clearly, there are computers, cameras, and various subscriptions for streaming software, etc. That all go into the cost of making this show and also the standoff on Wednesday night and the other content that I produce from time to time. So if you want to help support us, please head over to patreon.com/NZ Sport Radio. So kicking off the weekend. Now, I thought there was only going to be 2 competitive games this weekend. And boy, I think I was wrong about that because there was only one. One of the games that I thought that could provide an upset was the Crusaders versus the Brumbies. And I lost some money on this game because clearly the Brumbies didn't manage to turn up for this one, or didn't manage. My theory was that Razor clearly had been out of the Crusaders camp for a couple of days. The Crusaders have not had the best start to this season. Let's be honest, the first time that the Crusaders have not won their opening game against during the Razor era was this season. Boy, oh boy, they seem to have got themselves on track. They obviously had that win over the Blues the weekend before, and in this one, in that first half, basically the first 2 times the Crusaders got into the Brumbies half, they scored, and they went out to a 21-3 lead at half time. Sure, the Brumbies were more competitive in the second half, drawing it 14-all, but that was too little, too late. They needed to get some more points on the board in that first half. As we can see, the Crusaders now have had the fewest number of kicks for the past 2 weekends, only 14 this weekend, 15 last weekend, which contrasts massively with their with them in the first couple of weekends. First couple of weekends, you can see the Crusaders 43 kicks in that game against the Chiefs. That was the most of anybody that weekend. The 30 kicks, so twice as many again in week 2. 32 was the most that week. So again, one of the highest number of kicks. Now they seem to have settled down to a different game plan with that number of kicks having come right down to just 15 last weekend, 14 this weekend. Much more of possession rugby, perhaps there by the Crusaders. Longton Wright's Brumbies were better than that halftime score. Sure, but you've got to. It doesn't matter how good, how many times you get into that 22, how lovely rugby you're playing. If you can't put points on the board, you're going to lose the game. That's the only stat that matters, is points on the board at the end of the day. And they just couldn't break down this Crusaders team and get those scores. Look, only 18 missed tackles by the Crusaders. A solid defensive effort there on that front. And 15 turnovers, not great, but also on that one. But yeah, solid defense. The Crusaders being clinical for their first couple of entries. They became less clinical as the game went on, but they got those two earliest tries, and that was enough to see them home in this game. But yeah, as I say, what jumps out at me is how the Crusaders kicking numbers have changed drastically since that opening couple of weeks. Moving on then, and we've got the Waratahs versus the Chiefs. Look, this was a late game here. I had work the next day, and I'll be honest with you, this was not a game that I expected to be much to go any other way than it did, which was the Chiefs win. Look, the fewest number of offloads in this game. The Chiefs had only one line break, so that this was only 4 line breaks in this entire game, which is the fewest of any of the games. Perfect set piece from both teams, which is good to see. The Chiefs missed a kick, but that wasn't going to alter the game. At the end of the day, good set piece. Only 8 missed tackles by the Chiefs. Something I've been talking about is that this opening, this perfect start by the Chiefs is built on defence, not attack. On this one, and as you can see, only 84 tackles. They managed to control the ball. Only 9 penalties. So good discipline, good defence. Rack up a few points, and hey presto, you've got the win. And that's working for the Chiefs at the moment. And Loxton Wright says Waratah's attack did not work, but defence was good. And that the Chiefs had a lot of ball. Yeah, but as I say, this was one I didn't watch. It was late. And yeah, let's look at that. It's just built off defence, and that's what we're seeing from this Chiefs team. As much as we talk about DMAC and Sean Stevenson and some other people outside of that. Highlanders Drewers, another game. I know some people said, "Oh yeah, look, this one could be an upset," but look, the Drewers couldn't do it last weekend against the Reds, and I thought again another week away. This was going to be a tough one for them. Plus, the Highlanders starting to get a bit of their mojo with that win over the Force. Another one I could see only going one way. I did not expect 57 points from the Highlanders, though. So, wow. That cracked up there. Again, only 15 kicks from the Drewers. It's something we've seen consistently from them. They're not a big kicking team. They like to counter-attack and run with that ball. Again, for the Highlanders, look, no penalties, only 5 penalties in this game they gave up. So solid defence, 158 tackles, one of the higher ones. The Fijians controlled the ball, brilliant from that point of view. Very good from them having that out possession, but solid defence, no penalties, very few turnovers when they actually got the ball as well. Meant that the Highlanders racked up a big score in this one. Gilbert, man of the match here. As I say, I didn't expect anything else from this one. I didn't expect as big a score as that, but yeah, that was a predictable game coming into it on this one. Someone here thinks Fiji will do better at home. I think they need at least 4 more wins to try and get a spot in the playoffs. Yeah, we'll have to see about that one. Yeah, I do think there are different prospects at home from away, and it'll be one that you think about whether you back them at home, but you don't bother backing them when they're playing away. I think is the way for this one. Someone also made a comment. He's concerned about the Moana Pacifica and how long it's going to take them to get up to speed, or will they end up getting pushed out due to pressure from the fans? Look, 0 to 59. Ouch. That's I think that's the first 0 that we've seen this season. It's not the highest score, though. The Reds put 71 points on the Force. So we've had higher scores, as well as the Blues put 60 on to the Highlanders. But still, 59 points is very bad for Moana Pacifica. Look, the set piece, they had the worst scrum and one of the worst lineouts of the weekend. If you've got no platform, you're not going to have much of a chance. You then go and miss 45 tackles. Boy, oh boy, it's just going to be a long night at the office against the Hurricanes, who, let's be honest, are one of the, to me, a surprise team this year, doing much better. Lots of kicks, 33, so they're clearly kicking very well. Perfect set piece, so they had a perfect platform. And hey presto, there you go. There's your 14 line breaks, which racked up all of those points. They've got some deadly players in that back line. Boy, oh boy, it's interesting seeing Kinina Holo finally getting some rugby and not being injured, which has been his big problem for a number of years. So great to see that he's actually getting an opportunity now. I remember going down when I was living in New Plymouth, going to watch him in a preseason game for Taranaki, thinking, yep, he's wonderful, and then seeing him in a moon boot, and that was the end of his season before he even started. So he's had some real tough luck with injuries. Let's hope he can stay injury-free this season and rotate with Julian Sevilla and get himself some good game time and secure himself as a good Super Rugby player, because that's what he is. That's what he has the potential to be. Sorry, that's not what he is. It'll be good to see him grow into that role this season. But yeah, Moana Pacifica, oh boy. They've got the Highlanders this coming weekend. It's looking tough for them. This pre-season talk of making the playoffs is a long way away now, isn't it? Let's be honest. Next up was the second game this season of the weekend, where I thought we could see an upset, and we did. Well done to the Rebels, and they did win some money on this one. They won the game 40 to 38 in this one. Nothing stand out there from them from a stats point of view. Let's be honest. The Reds, plenty of offloads, but look, they got only 6 line breaks compared to 9 line breaks by the Rebels in their Rebels. Also decent on the old penalty side of things as well. Oh, thank you, Simon's pointing out that the Moana Pacifica versus the Highlanders is on free-to-air this Friday on Prime TV. I'll be actually working at the start of that one, so I'm then going to pick up my daughter, so I'll probably miss watching that game, unfortunately. But I say I can't see anyone but the Highlanders winning that one. Good discipline. A lot of missed tackles in this game. Look, 30 and 29. So yes, lots of missed tackles. Hence the 40 to 34 scoreline. But look, the Rebels have been doing been surprising us this weekend. This season. Sorry. Now, sure, they came up short in their opening game against the Force. 34 to 27 in that one. They could have got themselves a draw towards the end there nearly. But look, 33-39 against the Hurricanes. They then beat the Waratahs. 44-25 against the Chiefs. They weren't. They were never going to win that one. But upsets the Reds. Unfortunately, they've got the Fijian Drua away. If they had them at home, I think they've had a good chance. But away next weekend, then they back it up with against the Blues and the Crusaders. So boy, oh boy, three tough weeks for the Rebels coming up. But to me, they have been one of the surprise packages early on this season, and definitely have overperformed where I thought they would have been. The Reds, boy, oh boy, there's a tendency to going backwards. It just seems like a couple of years ago that they were the top team in Australia, or challenging to be the top team. So they were the Super Rugby champions, weren't they? For Super Rugby AU champions, beating the Brumbies in that final. And they've gone backwards from there. But there don't seem to be any question marks around the coaching of Brad Thorne. He took that really young side, grew them up, got to that final, and then have just fallen off a cliff. and disappeared. Sure, they've lost a few players, but yeah, I wonder what's going on there. And really interesting that there's been no question. There doesn't be any question mark around Brad Thorne and his situation, which is a bit of a surprise, if I'm going to be honest. Finally, Blues Force. Look, there's a whole bunch of stuff. Some articles bashing the Blues, saying how they had a bad game, and then just overcame the Force. To me, basically, as soon as the Blues stopped turning the ball over, and look, 16 turnovers in this game. The only people who were worse were the Waratahs and the Force with 18, 17 and 18 respectively. So look, lots of turnovers by the Blues. As soon as they stopped turning the ball over, they started scoring points, and it was all over. The Force never looked like scoring points and basically winning this game. So for all that the Blues might not have been at their best, look, they had problems at scrum time. In there, they never looked like losing this game either. It was just a matter of time before the Blues sort of sorted a few things out. The Force, sure, they couldn't hit the side of a barn with their kicks, but that wasn't the reason they lost this game. Sure, they could have made it a little bit closer, but I don't think it would have made any difference to the actual outcome of the game if they made those kicks. Look, the most number of turnovers this weekend, they actually the most tackles. And they had also they gave it the most number of penalties, which kind of happens when you're under that amount of pressure defensively. So when you've been put under that pressure, this game was only going to go one way, and the Blues have the players to do that. And look, across the board, we had some players rested, didn't we, this weekend? Bowden Barrett wasn't playing this game, for example, and a few others. So same with the Chiefs there, a few rested players from memory as well. So look, unsurprising that perhaps some of these didn't blow out, perhaps as bit as from that point of view. And not so much Blues putting out close to a B team would have put the paying punters off. What paying punters? I'm not sure there was anybody there. The crowd was abysmal. I mean, Armstrong was, but he goes to every game anyway. Whereas we had nearly 19,000 or 18,000 at the Warriors game at the same time. Now, look, it helps that the Warriors play at stadium, which has got a capacity of kind of 30,000. So that's over half full, and it sounded like it, and it looks like it. Whereas Eden Park, the capacity is close to 50,000. Now I'm not sure if that's with the temporary stands or not. So having the 9,000 or whatever it was in there really bounce. You lose them because there is so few people in there. The All Whites had 12,000 in Mount Smart against China recently. So look, the atmosphere for the Warriors game was really good, and not so much as what rugby crowds used to be like. There's definitely a lot that rugby can learn from NRL and how they market their teams. You walk around Auckland and you'll never see a Blues jersey, but you'll see quite a few Warriors jerseys and malls and stuff. You might see one a day of an All Blacks jersey if you're lucky, but you'll see plenty of Warriors jerseys. They clearly are marketing the game much better than rugby is. And rugby needs to rugby can learn a thing or two from them about how you make a match day and how you make people want to turn up. Because boy, I don't know if they used some fake crowd noise over the TV, but if they didn't, the atmosphere was really good at the Warriors game at the weekend. You can hear all about that game on our league show, The Standoff, on a Wednesday night at 8 p.m. to do join Brad and Richie for that show as well. So, yeah, look. Simon mentioned earlier that the crowds, or comment about crowds at Super Rugby Alpaki, yes, sure, they weren't very. It was awful. It was no one there. There wasn't anyone the previous weekend at Albany Stadium either for the semi-finals, and there was no one at Eden Park this weekend. The crowds are a real problem with for Super Rugby, particularly in New Zealand, and I just don't see the urgency from New Zealand Rugby, from the franchises, to try and fix it. I don't think they don't care. I think it's all about, do we get our TV money from Sky? Yes, right. Who cares about who's in the stands? That's all that we got the money, and it's about the money, so we can pay for the sport, so the sport survives. It's a real sad way to look at it, but that's how it comes across. That's how the administrators look at this. Now, whether they do or not, I don't know, but that's certainly the impression you get from doing it. I know that Stephen couldn't join us this evening, but some of the comments he made in our chat was he was not particularly impressed with rugby at the weekend, and was kind of like, were there any games to watch? Well, there was one. There was one game to watch. So what I've decided to start doing is I'm going to be doing a multi every weekend to see, okay, how predictable is Super Rugby. I did a multi 2 weekends ago across Super Rugby, the Six Nations, and also Super Rugby Aupaki, and it won. All the games were foregone conclusions before you even started. I think it was 2 games I decided, or 2 or 3, 2 games I think decided for the weekend, that one in Super Rugby, one in Super Rugby Aupaki. All the rest were a foregone conclusion, including the Six Nations. I think there are 4 games next weekend that we already know what the result's going to be. Right? Those are the Highlanders will beat against Moana Pacifica. So last week against Highlanders, Highlanders going to win that one. Reds hosting the Crusaders. I think the Crusaders, look at the Reds, also the Rebels last weekend. Brumbies versus Waratahs. Brumbies by far the best team in Australia, in my point of view. $1.30. That's the most risky one of these bids, of these bets. And then the Hurricanes versus the Force. The Hurricanes are going to win that one as well. So there you go. We'll see if next week I'll talk about if that comes off or not. But for my mind, there's only 2 games worth watching this coming weekend, which is at Fiji and Drua against the Rebels. Because I think the Rebels made a good start, but it is in Fiji, so I mean Fiji should win that one. But I do think that one is definitely is worth a shout, worth a watch. And then also the Chiefs versus the Blues. That should be a cracker. 2 of the teams that we're really talking about for the finals. Let's be honest, folks. So those are the 2. I think only 2 games at the moment that as I say, that I think are worth watching this coming weekend. You can kind of see that by looking at if we look at the table. If we talk about who was going to be at the top end, who was going to be basically we're going to see in the finals. It won't be easy for the Highlanders away from home. Oh, come on. I think it's pretty. Monaco just lost by nearly 60 points to last weekend. They are in a tough spot right now. But is that working? There we go. No, that's not what's supposed to happen. Let me see if we can share that again in a way that we can actually see it. Because here we go. So here's a table for after this weekend. What you can see is that we've got the Chiefs are at the top there with 5 wins from 5 games. The Hurricanes and Brumbies both got 4 wins now. Obviously, the Brumbies losing it to the Crusaders last weekend. Then we've got the Blues and Crusaders on 3 wins. So even though the Crusaders had a poor start to the season, they're in 5th place there. Those top 5 will be your semi-finalists. The gap between them and everyone else is pretty stark. If you look at you can tell that from the points difference, really. That points difference, the Chiefs are reading down 94, 110, 25, 48, 39 plus. You've then got the Reds with points difference of 8, and everyone else is negative. So those top 5, and then there's a big gap to everyone else there, folks. it's quite interesting. You've got the Waratahs down there 11th place now, but again, out of the bottom half of the table on points difference, they've got the best points difference with only -11. He says only. All the other teams. So you look at your Rebels, Highlanders, Fijian, Drua, Force, who are above them. -19, -57, -62, -62. So they've all had some big drubbings or big losses in there. The Waratahs haven't had that. Have kept everything close, so they are a team that I expect to shoot up the table as all those close losses become or they turn into close wins instead. I think is what we're going to see from the Waratahs. So I expect them to come up the table and be challenging for that top 8. Highlanders, as I say, I think they're starting to click now. I'm sure they've got a lot of injuries. Nocturnal Right says Otago-based teams sides never play well in South Auckland. Moana Pacifica will be more switched on. Sure, I don't expect it to be to nil, but I still don't think it's going to be. I think the Highlanders will have a comfortable win still. So that's my kind of read of the table. You got that top 5 and everyone else. At the moment, the Moana Pacifica clearly are off the bottom there at the moment without any wins and a -113. So nearly nearly twice the next worst. Not quite, but yeah, that's a lot of that's a big minus points. And actually, half of that came from the game at the weekend. There with that one. Something else that I thought it would be interesting to have a look at, as we have still got time, is to have a look at some of the sort of the betting that's available on the TAB. Not because I want to push gambling, but because I think it's just interesting to see who they think, what they think certain outcomes are likely to be. And so I'll just bring up some of the gambling that's available, or some of the odds that are available for Super Rugby on here. Outright winners, unsurprisingly, Chiefs, Blues, Crusaders are at the top there, and finalists, the most likely finalists, Crusaders, Chiefs, currently at $4.25. Crusaders, Blues at $7 is number 2 in there. So obviously they're thinking that even though the outright winner, the shorties odds from the Chiefs, the TAB is definitely expecting the Crusaders to be there in that final. The one that I thought was actually quite interesting to look at, though, was who is going to be the regular season top try scorer. Currently, Lester Fanganuku tops that. He's got 6 tries so far. The player who's leading the try scoring, Sean Stevenson, with 7 tries, is in second place there at $3.50. Coming on down then, Jordan Pattaya is the first Australian on there. But you look at players like Mark Talia, Caleb Clark with 4 and 3 tries. Interesting to see that they are so high up when there are other players who have scored more tries than them. The first player who has not scored any tries yet on the list is Will Jordan at $61. He's not even fit and playing yet. So interesting to see him there. He's ahead of players like Geordie Barrett, Suelasi Vunivalu, who scored 2 tries, Mark Nwangatuati, Bowden Barrett, Damien McKenzie, Richard Mwanga. All these people have scored tries, but interesting to see Will Jordan. They think he is more likely to be the top try scorer than those players are, even though he's not even played and isn't expected to turn out until the 8th round at the absolute earliest. Simon says Chiefs have definitely qualified for the playoffs. Well, if you have a look at the odds for making the quarterfinals, which is effectively the playoffs, and they've the TAB has decided that the Blues, Brumbies, Chiefs, Crusaders, Hurricanes are all definitely there. As basically it's $1 straight on. So you put $1 on, you get a dollar back, and a 1/10 of a cent the other sides then. And I think that's what I've been saying, isn't it? That your semi-finalists are going to come from those 4 teams. Currently, the TAB thinks it's going to be the 4 New Zealand teams in the Chiefs, Blues, Crusaders, Hurricanes, with the Brumbies next at $1.70. The Reds at $3 is the next one. And after their performance at the weekend, I'm amazed that they are that short odds, to be honest. So, so yes, there we go. That's some of the odds that I thought were kind of interesting to have a look at. Again, on the point scorer one, you're looking at Geordie Barrett, Richard Mo'unga, Dane McKenzie, Bowden Barrett at the top there. Sam Gilbert, even though he's got 46 points, is behind D-Mac, Bowden Barrett, who have got less points than him, for example, which is kind of interesting in that one there. So, and he's less likely to miss games, I would have thought, through rotation than your Bowdens and your Damon McKenzies and your Richard Mo'ungas. In fact, all those, the top 4, all there will miss games because of All Blacks rest weeks. So interesting on that one there. So I just thought some funny games there, having to see, or not having to, I'm having a look at some of what the odds are for different outcomes by the TAB. None of them I'll tell you straight away that I will be putting money on. I won't be putting money on any of those things we discussed about, but I will. You've seen the multi that I've already put on. I will also put some money on the other 2 games, which would be just $2 each on those 2 games, which is the Chiefs versus the Blues and the Drua versus Rebels. I think I'll be going with the home teams in both of those situations for those 2, just so you are aware. Please just remember with gambling, don't spend money that you cannot afford to lose. As I say, I only put $2 on each time, so very small amounts. Just to basically see if I kind of know more than the TAB. There you go. Hope you all have a wonderful week. Obviously, with the rugby coming up this weekend, as I say, 2 games for I'm concerned to watch, both on Saturday. Fiji and Drua versus Rebels, that's 4:35 p.m, and then the Chiefs versus the Blues at 7 p.m. on Saturday. So that's Chiefs versus Blues, I would say, is one not to miss. So say that's 2 of the teams who will be at the pointy end of this competition, going head to head. So that should be a cracker. Have a wonderful week, everybody, and chat to you all next Monday at 8 p.m.